thing on.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of The Cut. I'm your host, Christian Williams, and I am here, as always, with Randy Hall. Randy, how are you, man?
Doing pretty good. Had a nice family dinner and everything. Just been watching Combine for 2 straight days, and that's all I've been watching. A little bit of scouting here and there, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's what I did. It's kind of been fun. I didn't get to watch all the players at the Combine, so then this morning I watched Jelani Woods, the tight end out of Virginia, who just destroyed the Combine yesterday. That was a fun watch. I'm glad I did it before our tight ends episode too, because he will be talked about. But
that's a couple weeks away anyway, so it's fine.
I know we've got some time, but yeah, the Combine. It's Combine weekend, and what better way to do it than to walk through one of our Friday Fix episodes? And this week we're kind of going away from how we had been doing it. We were going in order. We got through the top 5, and we got tired of talking about just really bad teams and kind of crapping all over them. And the Dolphins aren't that. Now, I don't know what I would classify them as, but it's definitely an interesting team with a lot of cap space and a lot of draft picks as well. So if this is your first Friday Fix episode, we're going to talk through the GM and coaching situation, the state of the team, the current cap situation, some key free agents that we would sign to kind of fix them up. And then we're also going to do, as always, a 5-round mock draft. So let's get right into it. The GM and coaching situation. Now, I said right before we started that this is kind of strange how they did this. Normally, when you clean house, you clean house. But they did not do that this time around. So they have a new head coach, but a returning general manager. Randy, talk to me about Chris Grier.
Yeah, Grier is actually like a Dolphin stalwart at this point. He's been in this general manager position since 2016 and has actually gotten more power. He's actually in control of all football operations since 2019. So he, as much as the owner, I would say, completely just controls this team. And his approach usually is value-based drafting, and as well as a little bit with roster construction as well. They had a couple years ago, they had kind of a big spending off season, and I would say arguably 2 of those have worked out, and Agba and Byron Jones, and other guys have been let go, and Agba's free agent. So we'll see how that goes, but he's really built a good defense here, in a young defense where last season all 11 starters were under 30. And they were a top half of the league. I don't remember where they exactly ended up, but they were top half of the league all year on defense. And then just some history on him. This is his 23rd year with the Dolphins. Started as an area scout, the national scout, then director of college scouting, but got to start, ironically, for the division rival in the Patriots at 94 as an intern, full-time scout 95, but thankfully joined the Dolphins the draft before they drafted Brady, so he doesn't get that credit, unfortunately for him. But past that, I think I would say he's done a good job as a GM. I don't think it's necessarily been the most consistent everywhere, but I rarely go through drafts for the Dolphins and say, oh, they really fucked this up.
Yeah, I would have said that up until 2020, because I think when you and it's tough because I'm still a Tua believer, and we'll kind of get into that probably for a second, because that is a major piece of how they build this team moving forward. But when you take Tua over Justin Herbert, the pick before, and then it wouldn't be that bad.
I want to say quickly something you would have done. Just
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I'm not saying that I would have done it any differently. I definitely would have had that because I was out on Herbert and I was wrong. But when you follow it up with Austin Jackson and Noah Igbenogany with your other 2 first-round picks, that draft starts to look really bad. Now, they did get a starting guard / swing tackle in Robert Hunt right after that. So that was good. But outside of that, that draft class is just abysmal. And when you look at the players that were taken directly before, it starts to give me, Browns 2000s vibes and 2010s vibes, where they missed out on the right pick by 1 or 2 picks. And like you said, I would have done the same thing, maybe not with the Austin Jackson pick. With Igbenogany, though, he just hasn't really fit or really developed the way they expected him to. Jackson is the same way. He's still super young. We're going to talk through all of that, but I would say that Dolphins fans are getting ready to see maybe a change in that general manager seat. From what
Yeah,
I've
I
got.
think hopefully McDaniel can get some ground here for this draft and kind of put his own stamp on moving forward, like development pieces here and there. But we looked at the Jackson pick, whereas right now it's been a bad pick, but it was also the right pick for them at the time. It's just ironically they also made a good pick, and Robert Hunt's just better at both being a swing tackle and guard. We said looking back at that draft, we both said they literally had to trade up only with the Raiders at 12, who picked Henry Ruggs. That was the only non-tackle pick around there before them. So they literally had one shot to trade up, and it's the Raiders. They probably couldn't pick that fastest receiver fast enough. So I don't think that was happening. So they kind of got best of what was dealt to them, and I think they did a good job. I personally thought Austin Jackson was definitely developmental, and so did you. But we thought he'd probably be better than this right now, where he's more of like a D grade guard. And then even last year, where I think they probably, looking back at it, they probably could have gotten a different tackle besides Eichenberg, but they thought they were a win now team, and where they were picking, he was kind of the best win now projected tackle, and he has not gotten to the transition of the speed of the outside as quickly as we would hope.
Yeah, the problem with that logic is they felt they were win now, which wasn't wrong based on their year before, but they took Waddle over Sewell. And so and we know now that Sewell can play right tackle, so it would have been the perfect protection for Tua. That's not what happened. I don't want to, we said we were moving on to better teams so we wouldn't trash them, but I do think that paints a good picture of what Dolphins fans are feeling too. And Jalen Waddle's a good player, and it's a good thing that they have him as a building block. But
yeah, I agree. I think my point was more like when I said we don't hate their drafts when they come out of it. Like, I don't think we went out of last year with, okay, Waddle, Eichenberg, you still adjust the line, good prospect. Right. This is a shit draft. Like, no, and obviously Waddle's definitely carrying the class. But I think the offensive line besides Hunt just the picks haven't just worked out yet. But the good news for them is most of those picks are still really young and still could develop into starters. It's just see if they get a chance after this free agency and draft.
Yeah, and a major part of that development will come from the coaching staff, and that will be brand new this year. So, he kind of. So Mike McDaniel is taking over as the head coach of this football team after the whole Brian Flores saga is over, and now he is a linebackers coach for the Steelers, which is a really strange thing. But Randy, talk to me about Mike McDaniel.
Yeah. Surprisingly, he has a richer NFL coaching history than even I thought he did. 15 years as an NFL coach. Started in 2009. No, that's not even. It's even further down. He started in 2005 as a coaching intern for Broncos, then offensive assistant for the Texans. Then he was actually an RB coach in the UFL for 2 years. Then came back to be an offensive assistant on the famous Washington coaching staff with every head coach in the NFL right now. It feels like he was also part of that. and then he got promoted once I think most of them left to the wide receiver coach in Washington, then wide receiver coach for the Browns. And honestly, probably one of the best passing seasons from the Browns. I looked at the stats. It was a career year for Hoyer, Hawkins, and Taylor Gabriel that year, and honestly kind of carried the offense for a shit team, but carried the offense. Then moved to the Falcons during their kind of impressive offensive run, second best offense and third best scoring offense during his 2 seasons with the Falcons. And then the rest of this time he's been with the 49ers, focusing in the run game as the specialist and then offensive coordinator this last season. And they've always been a top running offense since he's been there. So I think he's adaptable. I think running maybe his biggest background strength, but we saw with the Falcons and the Browns where they couldn't run the ball, and he got some good passing game.
Yeah, and he was a major part of that. Mike McDaniel, just speaking to like the person, very strange guy. Really, he's a funny guy. He's a character, and I'm curious to see how that translates when he's in the leadership role. I know he had command of that offense, and that offense was operating pretty well, but Kyle Shanahan still had his hand in that. I'm interested to see what type of leader he turns into. I think that there are 2 outcomes here, and I don't think there's really a middle ground. I think that he is the guy. He is one of the better coaches in the NFL, or he is fired after 2 to 3 years because that style of leadership doesn't really translate. We've never quite seen a guy. Now, I don't want to call him a nerd, but he is very analytics based, but acknowledges that like you can't make all decisions off of analytics. So it's kind of a strange dynamic when you mix in all of that background.
Well, and I would say is the Falcon stint and this last stint have been his most successful. Obviously, like the Browns to its own extent, but there was more career highs than like season highs for the league. But both of those were with Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons for those years. So obviously he gets more of the credit, but I think McDaniel's, at least, even if he didn't have this enormous role in it, which I think he probably had a good hand in it, at least he learned more, and then he continued to grow under Shanahan over these last 5 seasons. And from what I've heard from other coaches in the league and other players, they do nothing except rave about the guy. So usually that's good sign as long as the GM gets him some talent around him. For the most part, I think he's going to be more of a player's coach. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, let's move on to the state of the team. So last year was a tale of 2 seasons. The Dolphins started off terribly. They were one of the worst teams in football to begin the season, and then knowing that they were kind of win now and it was kind of playoff or bust, they turned it on, and I believe they went on a 6 or 7 game winning streak. As the year kind of dwindled down, they started playing better football. Once they got Tua back healthy, they played much better. And that's kind of where I want to take this, because obviously with a new coaching staff, there's a new philosophy, especially on offense. That means new players, which means it's really going to be tough to take anything from 2021, especially when Flores was a defensive head coach, and now we're moving over to the offensive side of the ball. So state of the team, Randy, just the blanket question: do you believe in Tua Tagovailoa?
Yeah, I do. As a guy that I believe didn't go into the fantasy season as well, as one of my A1s, I think he's very, very talented. And he showed a little bit more of the rushing upside this year than we've seen, because he's, still coming off the injury and everything. But my God, I don't know if it's just the scheme and everything, but he was dealing for most of the season. He also got banged up and then had to work back, and then came back kind of strong after 2 games or so, pretty much starting in London, which surprised the Dolphins played better in London. But man, he really turned it on. I was really impressed by Tua. There's a lot of scrutiny the whole time about his position, his coach not wanting him, and that's kind of come out to be kind of true. And then, I think he's been kind of dealt a bad hand, but on the field, it's not maybe like the most explosive like Mahomes or Allen. I think you're getting a lot of what can win football games, especially in the kind of offense that's coming with this head coach.
Exactly. And I think the main thing to take away here is that McDaniel has already put his vote of confidence in Tua. Now Greer drafted Tua, so he's still there. I would expect that McDaniel will get a run without Greer if it doesn't work out this first season, but they have the tools to make it work in this first season. They have, like I said at the beginning, a lot of cap room and a lot of draft picks. So if it doesn't work, maybe they get a new regime in there, a new GM, and then we're looking at, well, how did Tua play? Is he going to be a guy that we extend? I think McDaniel's going to be able to get a lot out of him because I think just bar for bar talent, I think Tua can be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't necessarily know that he is yet. Yeah, that was rough. I don't know.
Garoppolo.
I don't know how that happened, but I think he can be better. I think he has more raw talent, but I think it is still raw because I don't think that he was getting the fullest extent of development that rookies should get, or second-year players, I guess, too. So,
yeah, I think Tua and Greer, I think, are going to be contingent on how this offense is built this season. That goes for running game, wide receiver room, which already is kind of full, but there should and will be some retooling there, and then offensive line play. I think you have a strategic and should be effective caller at the head coach for this offense. And I think a very capable quarterback. So it's everything around them too right now that's going to be the hugest thing. And I think they can get it done. And for me, I think Gaskin and Ahmed and all these, even if they don't bring in anyone else, can get it done as long as this offensive line improves, which it has to. And we're going to jump right into the cap room and everything. And this is one of the three teams for me, the Dolphins, the Chargers, and the Bengals, that have all this cap room. And I guess you could add in the Seahawks now with the talks of them not trading Russell Wilson, basically at this point. With the cap room, if you do not spend it all to try and win the Super Bowl, you have to spend a majority of this money, or else you're being incredibly negligent, and you will all lose your jobs. Just plain and simple.
Yep. Yeah. So how much cap room exactly do the Dolphins have? Let's get into it.
So starting right now, they have $60,226,417. However, there are some cut candidates and, in my opinion, some restructured candidates in there, mainly Devontae Parker. There was talks of trading him last year. There's talks of cutting him, talks of restructuring him. For me, I think you just restructure, give like a void year and hopefully move on if he doesn't work out. But if you do a lot of these cut candidates, people and everything, you can get up to over 78 million, about 78.6 million. So you have as much money as you want to spend. They have the most cap room, and then with these cuts, they can, I think, retain for the most part the most cap room in the league. So,
yeah.
But they do also have like 20-something free agents.
Yes. So let's get into that. I'll read off the list, and then you can tell me which ones are like the main ones. So Durham Smythe, Isaiah Ford, Vince Beagle, Greg Mance, Duke Johnson, Mac Hollins, Duke Riley, Brennan Scarlett, Jason McCourty, John Jenkins, Mike Gosicki, Malcolm Brown, Landon Roberts, Justin Coleman, Albert Wilson, Philip Lindsay, Jacoby Brissette, Emmanuel Ogba, Will Fuller. Then restricted free agents is actually a long list too for normal teams.
Yeah.
Preston Williams, Nick Needham, Jamal Perry, Patrick Laird, Sheldrick Redwine, and Savon Ahmed. So that is one of the longer lists. I feel like one of the other teams that we've done on this show had just a slightly longer list. But
I think it was the Lions because of all the 1 and 2 year deals they've been signing.
Right. So, Randy, who do you think of that group are the most important? And then also, do you expect them to match some of these restricted offers if any of these guys get them?
Yeah, so I'll start with the restricted. I think majority of them aren't really going to get offers, but they are kind of crucial players for these guys. Specifically, I think Red Wine now with cut candidates of like Eric Rowe, you need more secondary people, so hopefully they could keep him just to have a body behind two younger safeties. Preston Williams, when he's been healthy, arguably he's been better than Devonta Parker. So for me, I think you kind of have to match. But with the wide receiver class that we have in this free agency, I don't perceive Preston being a priority for any team. So I think they're fine keeping him. But if it was me, there's a deal out there between Preston and somebody, and I was deciding between keeping him or Parker, I would probably get rid of Devonta Parker because they both had injuries over the last couple of years and both have produced on the field when they're on the field, but one's younger and one's going to cost much, much less. So for that, and I think Savon Ahmed is also a key restricted free agent for them, especially if they don't bring in multiple backs this offseason. Because if you come back with just him and Gaskin, I think you could really have an effective running game with McDaniels with an improved offensive line, obviously. But he is definitely the much needed split back in that situation.
All right. And then, so obviously there were a few big names on there. They're unrestricted free agents. Mike Gosicki is the one that is always in the news as a guy that no one really knows what the Dolphins are going to do with him, because now my perception of it, and I think we went in two different directions with this. So my perception of this is Mike Gosicki is not the type of tight end that fits what I believe this offense will be. But I also don't know what this offense is going to be because they don't really have the roster build to be anywhere close to what the 49ers were and wanted to be there. So yeah, I can see it going both ways. I think I went with a different option, and I think you're going to end up bringing back Gosicki when we talk through our free agents, not to spoil everything. But that's the interesting one to me.
He's the very interesting because there's a clear comparison of, okay, well, coming from San Francisco, Gosicki's going to be the new Kittle. Well, no, because Gosicki doesn't block, plain and simple. He just does not block. Kittle's top 3 blocking tight end if he's not one. He is incredible, especially rolling the hips and driving and finishing blocks to the point where sometimes I would rather watch his blocking tape than offensive line prospects. That's how good it is. So there's a clear distinction there, and I'm not sure they actually have that type of tight end on this roster. Pure blocking, I think Smythe may be up there, but they have an extensive tight end room with no one really standing out besides Gosicki as an offensive weapon. And with him, there's at least 2 tight ends that are really going to set the tight end market this year. And I think both end up getting tagged instead of that. And that would be Schultz and Gosicki. I think they both get tagged. And then while I think the Cowboys then work to get a longer term deal done, I think the Dolphins truly see this as, let's just tag him and see if we can make this work kind of thing, and maybe bring in another tight end this year or next year. And I think that's a good plan, honestly. Keep him and see if you can make it work. Worst case, you have the money this year. Who gives a shit?
Right. Well, and there are other aspects to it too. Maybe you keep Gosicki as your big slot. You bring in another tight end, and someone will say, well, you're spending, 18, 19, $20 million on your tight end room. What the heck are you doing? When teams are using heavy 12 personnel, now it's 12, but Gosicki can't operate as a wide receiver. Then you're looking at something a little different where you're paying 2 weapons $20 million, which is a pretty good value. So so the other ones, Jacoby Brissette, Emmanuel Ogbah, Will Fuller. I don't see returning personally. No. I just don't think that worked out very well.
Yeah, I don't think it worked out, and I don't think he works very well with Tua personally. I don't think that's a good fit because Tua can throw deep. Like, let's not start that or nothing, but it's not what this offense is going to be with Will Fuller just being a pure deep shot and move around kind of guy. So I think he's best suited going somewhere else. Ogbah, however, I would say coming out to be by far their best defensive lineman right now. He's their sack leader. He's actually somehow earned the contract he got, and he's actually so much more improved than the last time I really looked at him. So
Which
I
was
think
when he was
they
in Cleveland.
yeah, exactly. So I think they have to kind of work to bring him back, or overly prioritize addressing that in other free agents and or the draft. For me, I think you bring him back though.
Yeah, which
He,
let's just dive into our free agent
I was gonna
additions.
say,
Actually,
he's also viewed as kind of a locker room leader, so a
I
player's
know.
coach coming in, you know how that goes.
I know, and I'll talk through why I don't bring him back because I think all of that accumulates to um, maybe outpricing them. Maybe they have a specific budget for that position
Yeah.
because of Jalen Phillips and what he can develop into. Because he was good down the stretch too, and I think he turned in 8 sacks last year as a rookie, which is a good number. So I think maybe they see Agba as too expensive for where the team is actually headed, but. You're exactly right. He has been a very good player for them.
Yep.
All right, let's walk through our free agent additions. And if you guys are watching live, I did not make graphics. It is combine weekend, guys, so I didn't have time. I was glued to my television and Twitter, of course. So, Randy, you can go ahead and start and walk us through your free agent additions.
Yeah, your 72 tweets today didn't give you enough time.
Probably 100.
You know what's crazy is I think when we started more gaining more traction on Twitter, I think I put alerts for your tweets because I have alerts for our account tweets and everything. Yeah. I turned that shit off
quickly.
I turned that off so quickly.
I believe it.
But for our free agents, for me, I did tag Mike Gosicki. I think the tag for tight ends is about 10 million. It's bottom 5 tags in the league. So like I said, I think he's arguably their second best offensive weapon. So I think you have to tag him and at least see if you make it work this year. And then you're not, or you get someone to replace him that you think can better fit the scheme, but then you're paying for that. So just for me, it's a 1-year deal. Fuck it.
So there is that rumor that Gosicki wants to be viewed as a wide receiver because of how often he's used out there, a la Jimmy Graham back when he was with the Saints.
Yeah, it didn't work.
I know it didn't work for him back then. Do you think that if he pushes for that and then gets that designation, do you think that they would still tag him at the wide receiver tag?
No, they wouldn't tag him at the wide receiver tag, which is 16, maybe.
I wanted to say either 15 or 16.
So they wouldn't pay him that. He's not getting more, in my opinion, he's not getting more than 10.5 million per. Okay. Which is about where the new tight end market's going to be. So,
right.
Okay. Past then, I also brought back Emmanuel Ogbah on a 3-year deal, actually, 10 per, and I specifically put this as front loading the contract because you have the cap room now, 5 years, maybe don't, or 3 years even, maybe don't have the cap room. He's also 28. So as a pass rusher, their primes are usually, 26 to 30, in that 29 in there. So I think he's in his prime right now. I think he's got at least 2 more years of good prime. Shout out KSI and Logan Paul. And then I think he can easily earn this contract on the field, and I just think you front load it to make so maybe that 3rd year you can cut him for free, basically. And then the actually only other big money deal I did sign, because that's 20 million right there, is Cam Robinson. I brought in to be the left tackle of the future for the Dolphins. I know Tua's lefty. I'm not moving Cam to the right side. He just played his best season ever. He's staying at left tackle. I don't give a shit. But 4 years, 16 million per, so 64 million in total. This is his market value. Tyron Armstead is rumored to get anywhere from 18 to 20. Step down for a guy that actually plays every year and is just played his best season ever. I think that's a smart move, especially because the rest of your line is young. So why overspend at a guy that I believe is also 28 or so in Armstead? I can't remember off the top of my head, but this is Cam Robinson was just on a tag. So this is his 5th or 6th year in the league, 6th year, I believe. So he's still very young, very deserving of this contract, and he immediately is your best offensive lineman. So I think this is a good deal. I also took a shot as a veteran running back. I was trying to find one that I really liked, and I think the most popular options out there are Melvin Gordon and Leonard Fournette. And I just sat there thinking what the Dolphins do, how they value running backs, and I couldn't pony up the dough for $5.5, $6 million per for those two running backs. Also, Melvin Gordon is so heavily rumored to stay in Denver that I just think it happens. I don't think they have a clear, smart move. I mean, obviously, fantasy managers are going to be a little annoyed, but I think he does take a little bit of step back on the split this year to give Javonte more time to shine. But that's still it's still an incredibly smart move to bring him back. So I think he's back. Fournette, I think, is gone, but I think he's going to get overpaid. And you got to remember, he got cut from his big deal. So he hasn't made the money yet. So I think he's going for money, and it's not going to be with the Jaguars. And for my opinion on how they value running backs, I don't think that's the Dolphins. I went with Marlon Mack, actually, who is a guy that has shown a lot of promise on the field, got banged up. They brought in a better running back, pure and simple, and Jonathan Taylor, and he's been unable to touch the field because of that, and rightfully so. Jonathan Taylor's much, much better. But Marlon Mack is a good pass catcher. He's good in between the tackles. He was running behind one of the best offensive lines in football, though. So I think bringing him on as a 1 year, $2.5 million deal, that's kind of a prove it, show you're worth it, we'll maybe pay it next year. Well, you already have other running backs on the roster, and you can draft one to be the future, possibly. I think it's a good money decision, and just get competition at running back. Someone's got to lead. And if he's coming from San Francisco that wants to have 16 backs coming into the offseason, I think this is a good, smart move. And it's probably a much cuttable contract if it doesn't work out. Then I signed the starting center for them because their starting center, Dieter, was dog shit. So basically, Robert Hunt probably grades out like on PFF as like a B. Everyone else is at best a C-, if not a D. So clear that fucking house, or at least make them fight for their positions. Brian Allen, the center for the Rams, was actually very, very valuable this year. He's only going to be asking reportedly for about $5 million. I think the Rams fight to bring him back, but they have two linemen that are free agents, as well as their best lineman at left tackle probably retiring. So we'll see what they do. They have to get back. They want to get back Vaughn. They want to get back Odell. Those are the two big names. So guys like Brian Allen are going to suffer. And I think he can come here and be the starter easily and be, the leader they need in the middle of this line that's overdeveloping and changing. And then I brought back Brissette on a 2-year, about $3 million or so per. It's just smart. Bring back a solid backup, knows the system. He's a good part of the locker room. It makes sense. And he can do everything Tua can do to a lesser degree if something happens to Tua. And then lastly, I actually added this in late. I brought back a Landon Roberts. This linebacking room isn't spectacular. Van Ginkel was okay. Jalen Phillips brought it on down the years, a sub pass rusher, but you basically have Baker, and that is it at linebacker. Landon Roberts was a starter last year, and he is good in run support. He, I think, had a career year in tackles this last year, but also had a career year in missed tackles. And he's kind of a detriment on passing downs. So I think you bring him back as a kind of rotational role this year, and you try and look for in the draft replacement, and maybe bring in another low-value linebacker to compete here. But I just had to bring someone else in this linebacker room because I didn't draft a linebacker in the first round.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, since we're gonna run out of time, if I don't just jump right into mine,
fine.
I am gonna start with my highest paid guy was Ryan Jensen. So I think the Bucs are gonna look to move on from Ryan Jensen. I think Jensen's looking to get one last payday because he's getting, I think he's 30 or 31 already, but he's still a high level center. And like Randy just said, Dieter was terrible, and their whole offensive line is largely pretty terrible. So adding Jensen to kind of man the middle at least, and kind of having Jensen there is going to help the guards no matter what. So I gave him 2 years, 13 million per. That gives him an out. Maybe he can.
Per.
Yeah, 13
I
million
thought that
per.
said 213. I was like, I feel like that's like 3 million short per, but
Yeah,
no, this is overpay to get the best center. That makes perfect sense now.
Yes, I'd give him quite a bit of money because they have quite a bit of money. Then I went a different direction from Mike Gosicki because of what we talked about, how I don't know that he fits exactly what they want to do. And I gave them David Njoku. I gave him 4 years, 11 million per. The Browns are said to be looking to pay him double digit millions. I think that means 10, and I think that a team can outbid the Browns for. Well, no, I mean, I think it means like we're gonna cap it at 10, not just it means 10 and up. Yeah, so,
it's just the way it rolled off your tongue. I was like, oh god, someone's gonna mess with that.
You're right, but Njoku is kind of the best of both worlds. He had one of his better years as a pass catcher, despite having a lower target amount. He was also the Browns' best tight end blocker by a lot. Like he can do both. He has developed into a very well-rounded tight end. You wouldn't think it just looking at his counting stats, but he's a good player. And so he would be a vital piece to their offense. I also brought back Jacoby Brissette because there are no free agent quarterbacks that I think make sense. I looked at maybe moving over to like a Colt McCoy level quarterback or backup. I don't think it's worth it because I think that he probably costs just a tad bit more than Jacoby.
Yeah. At this point, I don't think Jacoby, like, I think he'd rather just stay in Miami than possibly make 500,000 to $1 million more somewhere else and have to uproot his family. Like, right. I just don't see that as a realistic thing.
Yeah, for sure. So I brought him back. Then I went with DJ Chark as my starting wide receiver. So in this scenario, I am actually just going to cut Devontae Parker. Personally, I think a restructure is something that he won't be super fond of. And I also don't know that style of wide receiver is going to fit in the Mike McDaniel offense. I think Chark fits a little better. I think that he's got to have a prove it deal here, unfortunately. And a year and $8 million is kind of that. We look at what Juju Smith-Schuster made last year. He's on a year $9 million deal. And that was his kind of prove it to either get more from the Steelers or just get more elsewhere. So I went with DJ Chark staying in Florida and doing that. Then I went Melvin Ingram as the replacement for Emmanuel Ogbah. So like I said with Ogbah, I think they're going to get priced out of him. And I know that they have the most cap room. And I know X, Y, and Z could fall into place. And yes, they could bring back their best pass rusher. But I think that they do want to see how much sacking or pass rush productivity they can get out of Jalen Phillips. And I think that they can fill that need with a lesser amount of money. And Melvin Ingram, he had a good year after getting cut by the Steelers. And so I think he'll command some money, but a lot less than what Ogbah gets. I gave him $7.5 million. And then lastly, the one that might not be super appealing to fantasy managers, but I gave them Cordero Patterson on a $6 million per deal. So that I didn't even look at that as like a running back addition. I look at that as kind of like a weapon addition, playing mostly running back. I think Mike McDaniel wants weapons. I think that having Deebo Samuel in that offense last year, I think that he's going to want to do some creative stuff like that. I think Cordero Patterson is the best free agent option that can give them that ability. So give him 2 years. He's getting old. And I know Atlanta wants him back, but
yeah. I only want him in Atlanta or Miami for fantasy. Like I could take Miami because of exactly what you're saying. Like we're all excited that maybe Waddle can do that. We want Waddle to do that, but not at the clip that Deebo and Cordero Patterson have done this last season because I mean, I don't see Jalen's body holding up to that kind of thing. I want him more as a pure catch weapon and some rushes mixed in here, just to be more fun and more of a weapon. Whereas Patterson, you can kind of run to the ground in that aspect, while you let Waddle be more of a juicy, like bursty guy off of that. Not that Patterson isn't bursty in his own right, but he could be run a little bit more ragged than I think you want your franchise wide receiver to be.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think Waddle will still be used on like pop passes and stuff, but I don't think
he'll be heavily involved. No question there. I'm just saying, like, I know everyone's, he's going to be what Debo did this year. I'm like, not that he couldn't, but I just don't know if he'd stay healthy.
Well, and Debo hasn't even.
He didn't.
And Debo's a thick boy compared to Jalen.
He's bigger. So. That's the difference.
Yeah. We didn't really talk through team needs, but I'll just list them. Randy, the order here. So wide receiver, offensive tackle, interior offensive line, running back, edge, linebacker, tight end, quarterback, safety, corner, interior defensive line. That is every position.
Most teams have every position.
It's true. No, I just
need backups too.
So would you really put wide receiver over offensive line, both tackle and interior?
No, but I don't. It's exactly what you said, though. Like, I think one of Parker or Preston can live in this room, but I don't think besides Waddle they have another receiver that I think on this roster, maybe besides Lynn Bowden, that fits what they want at receiver. So, like, I think you could have one contested catch guy, possession guy, and both of those would be a decent blocker as well. But besides that, I don't think they have the receiver room they want for the future. So while I'd probably prioritize the offensive line, I also left it with what the Draft Network had because I always prioritize the offensive line. So I was trying not to be biased.
Yeah, I would put tackle and interior offensive line and running back over wide receiver. And I know running back is like not the position that you think of, but I would put all of those over.
These also are interchangeable depending on what you cut and what you sign. Sure. So it's going to be different from both our lists. They're a little different in the rankings.
Right. Very true. All right, let's get into the 5-round mock draft. The Dolphins have 6 picks in the first 5 rounds, which is good for them. Randy, you're up first.
Yeah. So first of all, I had to, because I always just do like multiple mock drafts for each team, and I had to start doing it for the Browns as well, just so the mock draft machine wouldn't have them pick a quarterback at 13. I was getting really fucking annoyed. It was every single mock they had a quarterback, and the only reason I was annoyed is because it affects the offensive line and wide receiver and edge positions that are affecting what the Dolphins are going to be doing at this 29th pick. So I had to keep going in there, and the most consistent option I thought was either offensive lines off the board, so you go with the wide receivers didn't go off the board as much then, or the edges didn't, so you go with one of those positions. But I think the best case scenario, it's either one of the top receivers like a Garrett Wilson or Olave, or, it could work out with this kind of system. But again, I also thought it was a little bit lower. So for me, it was always Zion Johnson was the answer at 29. And I think he's probably gone, but it also depends on the other positions and how quickly the tackles go, how quickly Kenyon Green goes, because they're about the same pick for me right now. So there's a lot of factors. For me, he was there almost every fucking thing. If it wasn't him, it was one of the receivers, and I was like, I'll wait a receiver. So Zion for me here, he could play every position on the offensive line. I think he's best suited for guard or center. In this occasion, he would be either left or right guard for the Dolphins for me. Day one, for me at this point, you have Cam Robinson, what the fuck's his name? Brian Allen.
Yeah.
He's not a predominant center in my head. Okay. Brian Allen, Zion Johnson, and Robert Hunt are your 4 starters. And then your 5th starters fight it out, whether that's right tackle, left guard, right guard. I don't give a shit. So figure that out past them. But now you have the starting lineman to help complete the system, and he fits the scheme. plain and simple. Wherever, I don't think he necessarily fits it at tackle, which is why I think he's interior for this team. But yeah, I think he fits. So following that up, I did prioritize the wide receiver position next. It was kind of a mixed mesh of who would be there as well, but the most predominant option was George Pickens for me. I think this is near his floor in the draft currently. I think if it's not Pickens, it'll be Christian Watson and or Mechie. Those are the other options here at this pick for me. So I think Pickens absolutely fits, and this is also meaning Parker's gone. After this, Parker's not just restricted, he's gone. And then Preston is fighting to keep his roster spot as the depth behind Pickens because Pickens is better. Plain and simple.
Oh, yeah.
He's an athletic freak, and he's been heavily injured in college, so there is some concern there. And there's some, we'll get into the off-field stuff possibly in the show for wide receivers, but there's some concerns there that I think keep him out of the first round and gives him a shot to be here at 50. But again, I gave other options that I think really fit and kind of play the same position. I would say Watson more than Mechie, I guess, at that, because Mechie's a little bit more of a possession and route running receiver than these two. But I think Pickens would really thrive here and kind of be a more movable DK in this kind of system. Because DK, isn't a route runner at all. Not that Pickens is great at it, but he's a little bit better.
He is.
So,
yeah.
But he's also a little bit slower. So, fair is fair.
Yeah.
And I followed up with prioritizing the edge of the future position because besides Agba, who I brought back, they have Phillips, who isn't a standing edge for them, like a 3 or 5. I mean, a 4 or 5 tech for them. He has to be a stand-up outside edge for them right now. Which I think we both think he could be that, but he hasn't shown that at the NFL level yet. And like you said, he did come along to stretch, but I think you get a guy here that does that as well in Sam Williams, the edge from Ole Miss, and he can do that. It's more of an outside linebacker and edge rusher, but he can rotate in and, it gives you movable pieces because I think as pure 3 tech and nose tackle, they have their guys of the future there as well. So I think Phillips is the edge of the future for them. I think Williams can be the heir apparent to Agba and learn and rotate in the system. And then I addressed linebacker position with Jojo Doman, who is kind of more of a do-it-all linebacker. They need help in coverage as well, which I think I brought up the Penn State linebacker last week, so I couldn't bring him up. I didn't want to bring him up again this week, but I thought that was a perfect fit as well. But Doman does the same kind of things. Probably with less missed tackle rate. So I think he maybe fits a little bit better here. The room's just not good besides Baker, just plain simple. So you need a guy that can play inside and out. I think Doman can do that to some extent. And he played at a higher level at Nebraska. So he attacked the running game and had to play some pass heavy teams as well. So I think he shows, at least on tape from what I've seen so far, that he has some ability to be a rotational starter, at least first year, if not just special teams star kind of position. So they need that much needed depth at the linebacker position. Followed it up with getting another guard and Cole Strange, the interior offensive lineman from Chattanooga, purely a guard in my opinion, but a developmental one at that as well. But with the young pieces you have here, getting another developmental piece, be your swing guard, rotational guard, or a potential start of the future, I think is a good move. I think Thayer Munford was another tremendous pick. Used him last week, so not you, because he does everything. He can play tackle as well, and I think that's something they're going to prioritize because they have prioritized that in the past. So just personally there. And I haven't drafted a running back until now. I went with Tyler Algier in the 5th round. I think this is probably late 4th, 5th rounds where he's going to go, in my opinion. But he's one of the guys I think has a chance to be the guy if given the opportunity with some growth. So I don't think he matters really year 1 here, but I think he's going to be overdrafted in rookie drafts if he lands here. Especially with the outlook I had of this offseason for the running back position for them. But I think he becomes the heir apparent here. And there's never going to be a pure dominant running back 1 here, I don't think. But I think he has the best chance in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that draft. Sam Williams, if you take away the off-field stuff and obviously the
Yeah, I drafted 2 of
allegations.
them. Damn it.
I know. This one much worse, but if you take that away, I think he's probably a high second-round pick, maybe even first-round pick. So, very talented guy. I think some team will take a shot on him on day 2. And then Cole Strange, Dane Brugler put out today, I think he sees 8 center prospects. He has Cole Strange as a center, which I think he's a guard. I think he can play center, and he's kind of undersized, so maybe he has to play center. But he's one of the 4 that he thinks can be a starter at the NFL level. So that's a good value in the 4th round.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Like I drafted 2 guard center, whatever, but like the center I signed was also a 2-year deal. Cam Robinson's a 4-year deal, but he's already your best offensive lineman, so that's fair. They still have the young pieces of the offensive line that I don't want to give up on, but
yeah,
Eichenberg and Jackson have to fight for a spot. That's plain and simple. And in that, Kinley as well, in that regard as well, I guess fairly. But
yeah, I like Kinley's tape, man. He's just
he just hasn't done much.
He's a big old guy, and I don't know if he can move enough for this offense. So.
Yeah, I
know. Speaking of big old guys, so I'll get into my mock draft. First, I went with Tyler Smith with the 29th overall pick. And Randy said, "Are you kidding? You took a guard." I don't think Tyler Smith is a guard. I think Tyler Smith is a tackle. He showed so the offensive line combine day was today, and he is incredibly athletic, which kind of shows up on his film. He does have some developmental things to work on. Specifically, he gets off balance and he reaches far too often. But when he connects, when he lands, he is good and he is strong. And so I think that tossing a guy like that onto his blind side, because I think he does have, since his footwork is kind of a mess sometimes, I think you may as well just rework it and toss him on the right side anyway. I think it makes some sense. And the reason I went with him over a wide receiver, like Randy had talked about, I think Traylon makes a lot of sense here. I think Traylon probably falls into the 2nd round after his combine. That's just what happens all the time. We see it all the time. And while everyone wants to comp him to Debo, and I think that Mike McDaniel would like to use him, I just didn't go that route. I want to go a different route because I just added a wide receiver via free agency and DJ Chark, so and Cordero Patterson. So I went with the trench because the trench matters. Followed that up with the 50th overall pick. I went with Kenneth Walker. I've gone back and forth on this. I think Zamir White just blew up the combine and is one of the most athletic dudes to come through here. I think he's locked into a day 2 pick. I think some teams are going to like him. I do think Kenneth Walker's style of running fits exactly what they want to do. We talked about this on the running back episode that getting him in an outside zone scheme kind of makes sense because he likes bouncing outside anyway. And while you do have to have some level of reading a defense, I think that is in the cards for Kenneth Walker. And he's fast. He's real fast. And I think McDaniel's going to value speed. So took him with the 50th.
Is his official under 4.4 now?
Yes, it's 4.37, I believe. He was faster than Brees on the official times.
I don't understand that, but no, I think he really works, and he fits the San Francisco style of not all in one kind of back. So Gosicki can still have his role here, right. Or whoever the fuck else, But yeah, I think he fit. This is one of the spots I think Walker fits actually.
Yeah, I do think Zamir White is an interesting one-cut type of player that has that breakaway speed, but I went with Walker this time. I might do it differently in the future, but
shall see.
You're right. Then with the first third round pick, the 101, I took Darian Beavers, the linebacker out of Cincinnati. Guy that I'm not super high on. I think that in coverage he's a little stiff. I don't think he has great hip flexibility, but I think he's a pretty good tackler and he's got some good size to him. I think that's something that has worked in that division in the past. If you look at the Patriots linebackers, they are always massive, and I think that kind of building kind of a counter to the division rivals makes some sense. Beavers kind of fits that mold. Not my favorite prospect in the world, but I also didn't want to invest in linebacker in the first 2 rounds because it's
No,
linebacker.
no.
So,
Well, and
um,
it's a perfect replacement for Roberts as well.
right,
So,
right.
I
Uh,
do you have him more as an inside or outside linebacker?
well, I think I'd try him inside.
Okay,
Um,
because I had him more as like I couldn't decide. Like that's why I didn't pick him honestly, because I thought of
right,
him as more as like an outside chaser, like not a blitzer edge, but like sit
right.
outside and chase to that sideline. It'd be really good at it. But I think
Yeah,
placing Roberts makes sense though. Now that I think about it.
yeah, yeah. I'd try him there. Then, so fourth round, pick 119. I took Brian Cook, just rolling with Cincinnati. Um, Brian Cook is really good though. I'm shocked that we talk about this every week. There are things about these mock draft simulators that don't make a ton of sense to us at times. Brian Cook being here in the fourth is borderline that. I think he might be a day 2 pick, but this is kind of early in the fourth too, so it could very well happen. Just a good all around player. I think he's good in coverage. I think he gives you some versatility, and I think adding to the safety room is a necessity, as we kind of outlined in the free agent part. You guys are probably asking, where the hell are you getting receivers? Well, remember, I did sign DJ Chark, but with the 123rd pick, I'm taking Khalil Shakir, the wide receiver out of Boise. Had a really good combine, has some really good film, but doesn't feel like a guy that did enough to push himself into day 2. I think fourth round is kind of the sweet spot for a lot of these wide receivers. And Shakir, he's a good separator. I think he fits Tua really well, and I think he fits what this team is going to want to do. He's got some aggressive hands too. I don't want to give the comp away, but I think of Deontay Johnson quite a bit, and he's actually more athletic than Deontay. So that might be shooting for the stars, and maybe that's the ceiling, but that's what we do here. We talk about the ceiling. And then with the fifth round pick, 157, I took Luke Gadecki, the guard out of Central Michigan. His teammate is getting a lot of the hype right now, Bernard Raymond. But when I first watched those two play together, there was a part of me that said Gadecki can be better if he shifts into guard, because I think he played a lot of right tackle. And so if you move him into guard, I think it makes some sense. I think this would be my pick to start at left guard. So my starting offensive line here would be uh, Eichenberg at left tackle. I would toss Gadecki into a position battle with all of the other guards that they have over the last few years. Jensen at center, Hunt at right guard, and Tyler Smith at right tackle. If Tyler Smith doesn't work, then we move him into right guard and maybe bump Hunt out. This gives you some options, and I think that they need options on that offensive line. So
Yeah. My only quorum with your draft is when you like got rid of you didn't bring back Agba and you got a 1-year deal with Ingram, and I know you're viewing Phillips as the star of the edge rushers, which I do as well. I still think they need like the more hand in the turf guy on the other side, and I don't think you got one for the future at least. But you did bring a stud in for the season, and they have other guys there, so like, I get it. But that's the only thing I could even. But you know, you didn't overdraft anyone in the 4th or 5th round either, so you made smart moves there.
right, and I'll say, so I think Christian Wilkins has played okay, and
He has, but it's
I
it's
think he's
hard for him to be that
rotational.
full the 5 tech. Is where I'm like,
I know, but I also I've talked about a lot of edge rushers, and every single one that I was looking to pick on day 2 or even that early 4th, we've talked about already, and I don't want to keep
I know.
rotating the same guys through,
I'm
because they're
trying.
going to land
I'm
on one
trying.
team. They can't land on all of them,
I
So
know, man. I'm trying my
um,
ass off to get new blood in here. I get it.
one I did look at though was Isaiah Thomas, the one out of Oklahoma. I talked about him a couple weeks ago. I think he's a really good fit to be like the rotational piece behind Agba this year. Just a good player. And then I thought about his teammate Nick Bonito, but then I remember that Jalen Phillips kind of played that role that Bonito would have to play in this defense, and so
Yeah.
I didn't know if I would move people around like that. So
Yeah. So for what it's worth, my offensive line would be Robinson, Cam Robinson at left tackle. I have it differently on here, but I would actually put Zion at left guard, Brian Allen, Brian Allen at center, and then I would have Austin Jackson, Kinley, Cole Strange. Well, no, actually, I would have Robert Hunt at right guard. He played his best season there. Just keep him there, and then have Austin Jackson and Eichenberg fight for the right tackle position. I had it differently here because I thought more guard competition, which there is, but screw it. Like let's keep people at their best positions.
Right. It pains me that they've invested so many picks into the offensive line and they've just all been bad except for Robert Hunt. And jury's still out on Eichenberg. I don't want to rule that out, but I mean, good God. And Eichenberg at right tackle, I think
that's also where I think both of us thought he would play. I thought he'd be a day one right tackle. Like,
I also think there's a world in which you bump him into guard.
There could be.
He doesn't have the foot speed because he does not have the foot speed right now. So
no, yeah, I think both of us gave him 4 starters with a 5th fight. Wherever they put it,
yeah,
which is fight.
I mean, when you have this much capital and this much money to spend, I mean, you kind of have that ability to say, look at all these guys we have. You guys all get to compete for one position. Otherwise, you lost your job. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this would be the year to let one position fight, and this gives so much depth for rotational pieces on the offensive line too. We both gave, and if you only figured out 3 after this year, you already improved. Or if you figure out 4 and you don't figure out the 5th next year, that's your focus. I think this is a good way to get them on the right path because the defense is carried and the offense has been efficient and consistent at times, but also dead other times. So, I think you build both sides, but you have to build offensive line.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that'll do it for the Friday fix of the Miami Dolphins. We have no idea what team's doing next week.
Yes, we will argue about it for the next 3 days.
Yes, this is probably true, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys are listening on the podcast, make sure you subscribe. We will be back on Monday with a combine recap and a mock draft is what we said, right?
Yes. Yep.
All right, so wide receivers are on pause until the following week, and then we'll get back into our positional breakdowns. But a post-combine mock is always a fun thing to do because it's going to look a lot different than the pre-combine mocks.
Well, and we are also said that we are either going to take someone in the industry's mock for the first round or do a simulated mock for the first round, and we're going to basically do the second round. So we're going to tell you what your team picked both rounds, obviously, but it gives us the ability to talk about more people, talk about some of the combine risers and standouts, but I don't think everyone wants to hear us repeat the top 6 people every week, so it's got to move around.
And also, we don't want to hear ourselves doing that.
No, I already hate it.
we get tired of that. So yeah, make sure you guys tune into that. That'll be Monday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to see the Batman in like a few hours, so we'll talk about that next Friday, probably. Hopefully, if Randy gets there,
we'll see.
We're hoping. Anything else, Randy?
I guess not. I will say the after party just finished. And I thought that was really good. I got the person right.
I did too, very early. I'm kind of.
I did not get it early. I got it very late. Literally after they got through everyone, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, we can't spoil that. If you guys have Apple TV, it's a must watch. If you don't have Apple TV, go get Apple TV and then watch that and Ted Lasso because
get it for a month. Watch both of those.
Exactly.
Wait till Ted Lasso comes back. Get it again.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to work the system. But yeah, fantastic show. Season 2 is in production. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. I don't know necessarily what they're going to do with it. Obviously, I think it'd be new characters, but besides the cop, obviously.
Yes.
But I hope it should be pretty good. I was pleasantly surprised with this one. So.
Me too. Me too. All right. We'll probably talk more shows next week, or the Batman. We definitely have
Yeah,
to.
we'll hopefully get to talk about that.
Yeah, but all right, guys, we'll be back with you guys on Monday. Until then, for Randy Hall, I'm Christian Williams. We'll talk to you guys later. Peace.